Hello and welcome to the tutorial for July 24th for World Watercolor Month. The prompt is avocado. I found this photo on unsplash.com and it was posted by Lucas Rosin. Unsplash.com is a great place to find photos to use as reference for paintings. That's okay, and you can go ahead and print off that reference photo from the screenshot from your just regular old printer. It can be black and white, and then color the back of that with pencil and transfer it down to your paper. I think I have another video about that previously in my tutorial series. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're just going to start with this avocado shape. I want it to take up most of my paper. I like to kind of mark out where things are going to be. Otherwise, when I draw, sometimes I'm a little too small or a little too big. So, and this kind of comes down, so I just kind of like to mark out how much, like I'm going to come about here and I'm going to swoop around here and it's going to come back here. It'll be a little flatter. I'm just kind of making myself some landmarks. I don't always do this, but I think it can be helpful sometimes. So, kind of like I'm creating a dot to dot for myself. And I'm putting this a little off to the right side, but not much. What's nice about these organic shapes is if you don't get it exactly right, it doesn't really make a difference because nobody's going to know. All right, that your avocado from your reference photo is slightly more round or slightly more elongated. Nobody's going to know that because they're not going to see your reference photo. They're only going to see your artwork. All right, and so there is a stem, and the stem kind of comes off to the side a little bit, so I'm going to do that, and it's really just like a rounded rectangle shape. And then from there, and it kind of points up on one side. And then we've got the actual stem, and I'm going to give it a slight, I don't know that it curves, maybe a little bit in the picture, but I kind of like the idea of having a little curve. So I'm going to give it a slight curve. When you're looking at a reference photo, it's really only for you to use for reference. That means your art does not have to be an exact reproduction of whatever your photo is. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Okay, so this has a leaf. I really like, there's like a stem coming down here, and there's a leaf here. And so we're gonna kind of, and the shape is, now when I draw leaves, I like to draw the center and then work the shape around the center. What I am gonna do is a quick Google search on avocado leaf shapes because the reference photo leaf is a little bit like, it's a little, I don't want to say awkward, but kind of, right? Okay, so they're elliptical or oval. And so let's just, and these, that's what it looks like from the picture. I just wanted to double check with Google because this one's kind of off. You can't see it all the way. All right, so I'm just going to bring it down like this. And then it's a little rounded. And it comes to a point. And the reason that I like to draw from the center is because when I have a leaf, so there's a leaf that's coming down, but there's another leaf that's coming off of this same branch in our reference photo that it kind of curves behind. And so if you start with your center line, you can build the leaf off of either side, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna kind of like come right here, right, and I'm going to bring my center line of that because it kind of arches back and down. But we're seeing the side of it and kind of the underneath part because you're kind of looking up at the bottom and then you see the edge side here. And so by having where this center line is, what I can do pretty easily is go, okay, we've got my edge, it's coming up like here for where I'm seeing the face of the leaf, right? And it's got a little bit of a curve. And then here, same thing. It's got kind of a, we're just seeing it from the side profile, right? And it's almost like it's rippling a little bit and rippling. And now, as we're coming up to this side, we're seeing the underside of it. And so because I have my center drawn, actually get this a little, oops, sorry about that. I have my center drawn. Now I'm going to do the underneath of the leaf, which is going to come up out of the frame and back here. So now do you see how like we can kind of see how that leaf shape is taking place? And because I have this center line here, I can follow along easily. So I'm going to to only do those 2 leaves. I know there are other leaves in the picture. There's kind of like a little, these are kind of cool how they connect, and so I'm not going to draw the actual leaf that goes with it. Maybe. There's another one that kind of comes off, and it's got like a little kind of kink, and it goes down, right? And this stem is connecting with that midline of the leaf. And so now what I'm going to do is just give that little bit right here. All I'm going to worry about, and it's not exactly like this in the photo. The photo has like it's kind of curving up differently. I'm not going to do that. I just want to, I'm also going to, we're going to move this a little. Sorry, guys. Okay. Stem and leaf. There. Okay. And I'm going to let it kind of slide off. So my leaf looks a little different, both of these do, from what's in the photo, but I think that this is effective at framing our avocado, which is really what we want. Now the lines in these leaves go kind of down, and so I'm not going to make a bunch, but I'm going to make a few. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want to paint around those, because that part is going to stay light. We're going to do a lot of, some negative painting in this. I'm going to make my lines a little darker so that if you want to take a screenshot of my drawing, you can. I try to draw kind of light because that way I don't have so much erasing to do when we're ready to paint. But for this, I think it's easier for you to take your screenshot if I have them a little bit darker. There we go. Okay. And let's make this a little darker too. So this is our stem, and then this is where our leaf starts. And remember, we've got this kind of really cool curvy, ripply effect. And where it's rippling is where those little, where these seams are. And this is a little straight. Now I'm being nitpicky, but we might just give it a little bit of a, there, just to make it a little more interesting. All right. We've got these little, we're going to paint outside of those. Okay, so if you want to take a screenshot now, let me darken this up a little bit so that you have a drawing, and then you can transfer that to your paper. I'm just going to, let me zoom that up a little bit so that you can see it easily. There you go. Go ahead and take your screenshot now, and then we'll get started painting in a moment. Okay, this has a definite light direction or light source. It is coming from this side here, and sometimes I like to make an arrow on my tape to remind me that my light is coming this way, and so it helps me develop my shadows and the areas that I'm going to keep really light. I think what's neat about this is you have this leaf and it's casting a shadow on the avocado. So there's a surprising number of colors in here. We're not going to worry so much about the texture. We'll maybe go in and put a bit of roughness with some dry brushing at the end, but we're going to worry more about developing the shape and the colors. And we're going to use some negative painting. We're going to use some glazing in order to develop that. So we're going to start with yellow. I'm going to get my large brush, my size 14, and we should hydrate paints. I haven't done that yet. So go ahead and spray down your paints if you haven't. I'm zooming back the camera a little bit because we're going to pull from paints a lot, and I thought it might be nice to see that process. Sometimes I have it closer. I'm never quite sure, like how much of my paper should we have versus how much of the paint palette should we have. I wish that there was a little more space that I could show both, but or maybe make this, I guess if I had two cameras, I could do a smaller camera here and a bigger camera here, but I don't have that option, so we're just going to go with it. All right, enough about that. My palette is pretty dirty, and I'm going to leave this dirty, but I think I'm going to clean this space because I want to be able to pull in a pretty pure yellow, and I don't really have a spot for that. So I'm gonna just spritz a little water in there and get a paper towel and just clear out that portion of my palette. There we go. Okay, so we're pretty cleaned up here. There we go. And the next thing is to mix up some of my yellow. So I'm going to start with this really kind of cool, this is a permanent lemon yellow. I'm going to start with that. I'm going to mix up a nice pile. And so there's going to be a lot of pausing and drying for this. Just so you're ready for that. When we glaze paintings, and I find this is a really nice method to use for anything botanical, or, you know, I consider this kind of botanical. Okay, this is really bright, but that's okay because it's not going to stay bright. And we're just going to paint over everything because, yeah. So this first part's super easy, right? I don't have enough water in there. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now we've got our papers fully wet, which is nice, and we have our first layer down. This is going to establish those really light areas. The next thing I'm going to do is grab up a little bit of my sap green. Sap green is like this nice grassy green. I'm going to bring it into this yellow because we're just going to keep developing this darker. And I'm going to pull maybe a little bit of the yellow as well. So some things I want to be really soft, and some things we're going to have to be harder edges. So right now we are going to grab just some things. Let's start in the background. So if we were looking at this background, okay, sorry, I'm deciding. Maybe we're going to leave it light yellow. I think we're going to leave the background light yellow. All right, sorry about that. Okay, so I'm trying to make it simplified, right? Not make it too complicated. So with my green, I'm just going to, I'm going to leave this spot blank right here. We're going to paint around it because that spot is going to be really highlighted. And I'm also going to leave a spot in the middle here with nothing in it. Right? And it's wet and it's bleeding out, and that's okay. And then we're going to add a bit of green. This is a really light kind of lemony yellow green, right? Because we've mixed that sap green with that permanent lemon. And I just want it to be soft and flowing. All right, and now let's go ahead and paint in around the leaves, but just leave those little stripes. See how I'm leaving those empty? My water paper is pretty wet, so they're gonna kind of fill in. They might all the way fill in, and that's okay because we're gonna get a lot darker with this. And if it stays a little light, that's okay too. All right, and I'm just painting in each of those shapes. Just leaving, and as we go, our paper is going to get a little drier and drier. Remember, when we're filling in shapes, we're trying not to outline like that. We're just filling in kind of top to bottom. Okay, now we're going to use a slight lifting technique. I'm going to pull out a brush. I need to pull out a brush that's right for that. Let's see. Let me use this brush. I'm just going to pull up in this middle section. Oops. Okay. I need a different brush. Sorry, guys. Here we go. Get a little water, dry it off really well, and then we're just going to paint right in the center of that line to lift it up. And I'm going to do that here. In that center line, lift it up. And same thing here. I'm just going to paint up here and lift up where that was. And you can dab your paper towel to it a little if you need to. Just be careful not to dab it all over the leaf. Okay. Now we're going to go through and paint this leaf. And for this one, I'm just going to paint the whole thing. I'm not worried about leaving any spaces because that one can be a little darker. I'm going to string up into these stems. And then I'm going to come in here and paint here. And we're using a big brush because we're trying to keep it nice and loose. We use a small brush from the start You can just get too tight. And then we don't have that like loose flowing watercolory look that's so much fun. Okay, so you can see I've bled all around. I'm happy with that. This is a really light green, and so it just gives us this, like, if we had waited till it dried all the way, that would have been okay too, but it wouldn't have had as soft an effect. And I think we're going for something that's painterly, right? And so we do that sometimes by letting things bleed out or move around. This just creates a looser style. Okay. I'm trying to decide if I want to swash right here. I think I do. So I'm going to water down. See how this corner's looking a little empty? I'm just going to water, just going to come in and just go like that. And then I'm going to give it a little like splash, splash, splash. And I might pull, whoops. I might take a bit of paper towel here and pull a little bit. Oh, there we go. Just making it a bit more, like there could be a leaf down here. Like we just splashed in a leaf. Okay, I'm gonna leave that alone. And maybe back here. I'm gonna kind of paint in the illusion of a leaf back here. And a little bit of splashy, splashy. And then if I've splashed onto the rest of my avocado, I'm gonna pull that up. Gently though, because you don't want to pull up what you've just painted. Okay, that just gives me a bit of extra, like, something, something. If you need to do that in a few spots, do that in a few spots. Because there are leaves behind here, and I think I'm going to leave this corner empty. Sometimes it's nice to have a corner that gives your eye a rest. So, like, our eye is going to move up, we're going to have some texture, and then it's going to rest. And it moves up and around and rests. So, we're going to leave that there. Okay, now what we want to do is let this dry all the way, because we've got this really soft washed background. This is a really good start. We're going to put away our size 14. We're going to move to a smaller brush after this dries. So let's give it like maybe 15 or 20 minutes. You can use a dryer. I have one right here. If you don't want to wait the 15 or 20 minutes and you just like give it a little dry, you can do that, or you can let it dry, make yourself a cup of tea, something like that, and come back and see me in just a little bit. Okay, I'm moving to my size 6. It is a pointed round. Put away the size 14. You can use like a 6 or an 8 would be good. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually finish the leaves in this one round, because we want to focus the rest of our attention on the avocado. I don't want the leaves to become the star. And so we're just going to go in and give them a little bit of depth and dimension. The blue I'm going to use for this is not going to be my typical French ultramarine. Instead, I'm going to use this, which is a really beautiful color. It's a phthalo blue green shade. And this is a paint that is, I believe this is Rembrandt. Okay, but I'm going to let it mix in with other things, because we're going to leave this kind of dirty. Now I want to get out my sap green. If you don't have a sap green, you can mix your blue and yellow. You want to use a kind of a cool or mid yellow. Maybe not cool, probably more like neutral. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm sorry, it's been a very long day at work. I'm trying to make sense here. Okay. I'm just mixing in a little bit of yellow and a little bit of that blue and a little bit of the sap green, all kind of together to get a nice kind of pile that I can push one way or the other. So I've got like, it's a little more yellowy over here, a little more green here, a little more blue here. And that way when I'm painting, I can kind of pick up from those different spaces. So for this leaf, I'm just going to get a little bit, but I've got not a lot of water, not a lot of paint on my brush, making sure it's pretty diluted. And what we're going to do is this leaf here has kind of a darker face. So I'm going to just push out, not perfectly, and I'm going to leave the center part. And that's it. I'm just going to leave it super. I'm going to smooth this out though, because the leaf is a smooth edge. So we'll want to smooth that out a bit. Okay, there we go. Now, for this leaf, it's going to be a little lighter. So I'm going to mix in a bit more of the yellow. Let me get a little more yellow. And I was using the lemon yellow at first, but now I've switched to my Azo Yellow Medium, which is kind of like Hansa Yellow, just a different brand. This is a Rembrandt Yellow, which I don't think they make anymore. I'm going to have to find a new yellow. It'll probably be Hansa Yellow from Daniel Smith. Okay, so now let's paint in the leaf. And we're going to try to preserve this main center line, so we're going to paint around it. I'm just going to, this is called negative painting, when you're painting around things to preserve their highlight, or their kind of, you know, makes them kind of almost luminous. And I'm going to do both sides. I'm going to work a little quickly, because what I want to be able to do with this is charge in a little bit of darker green. And what's interesting about this is it's a little bit more green towards the top. So if we use a little more, whoops, that was a lot greener. That's okay. And so let's just charge in some of this. And do the same thing here. I don't want to get too detailed here, because this is not really what the painting is about. Painting is really about the avocado. And it's easy to get caught up in the wrong stuff, because you're like, ooh, it's kind of, you know, it's fun to do and fun to like paint all of these things. I'm just going to leave this. And these lines are a little wide. I might bring them in a little. Might mix up a bit of the darker. They're a little darker on either side of where these little veins are. So I'm just going to go in with my slightly darker. I don't have a lot of water. I'm being careful not to add a lot of water, because if I do, I'm going to create some water blooms. I'm just going to kind of pull in there. That was probably a little big, but that's okay. And remember, things tend to dry lighter than you're seeing on the painting right now. So it might look a little darker than it'll actually end up being. Okay, I'm going to leave that alone. I think that that's good. We've got a little like funkiness here, but I kind of like that. Now let's focus on this leaf, which is more yellowy. So I'm going to pull out a little bit more of this bright, this is a permanent lemon yellow. And I'm just going to kind of highlight down here with it. And these edges, because this is where the sun is really hitting. And I'm going to kind of hit those veins like that and like this. And there's a little bit more. You can kind of see it on these edges as well. And now I'm going to go in with my slightly darker green. Not much, but it's a bit more green, a little bit less yellow, right? And just kind of, I might mix some of this in there. Just kind of playing with this, like playing with the color mixes. And I'm just dotting. Do you see how we just dotted in? So I'm going to leave some of this for the paint color that was on here beforehand. That's it. We're going to be done with that. I think this is looking a little glaring, so I'm going to mix a little bit of this medium yellow into this paint, and I'm just going to kind of pop down here. Give that, it'll be nice and bright. So it still preserves that light feeling. And do you see how like I'm not holding my brush too tightly? I'm kind of swashing it around, because I really want this to have a nice light loose feel. I don't want it to get super tight. And so those are the kinds of things that help me keep a painting a little looser, is to hold my brush loose, like kind of swash in color here and there. It's a little hard for me to talk through these tutorials, because in some ways I don't know what I'm going to do with these colors until I actually plop them on. I'm making these decisions on the fly. Some paintings are a little easier than others to do a tutorial for, but this one is a little difficult because I want to just like push, push, push with my paint. I don't know why I'm full of so many sound effects today. I think I need more sleep. Sorry, guys. Anyway, here we go. This is raw. This is real. Okay, I'm going to mix in a little bit of blue, a little more blue, and we're going to go into our avocado now. I want to keep it, it's still pretty yellowy. It's a yellowy green. So let's bring in our yellow and our blue. I think I might pull in a little bit of that sap green too. Sometimes I use a sap green to just give me a better base so that it doesn't start to get too, like I use the sap green and I add in yellow or I add in blue to make it go lighter or darker and to keep it so that it's not like flat looking. But by using the sap green, it makes my greens kind of harmonious, right? So I don't look like I'm too posterized. Okay, if that makes sense. All right, so for the avocado, when we take a look at it, this part is really light. There's a dark shadow here, but it's a harder line. So we're gonna do that at the very end, and then this, we're gonna keep really light. We're gonna do a little dry brushing at the end to add some texture to that, but for the most part, we're gonna leave it light. And then this is shadowed, so this is darker. And then there's a little bit of shadowing down here, and there's some like kind of browns and reds that are part of that skin. And there's kind of like a back highlight here in a lighter blue color. So I think let's start with that. And then where this shadow is, what's really interesting is if you look very closely at the photograph, that shadow comes down here. There's a teeny bit of kind of like backlight of light blue there too. So what I'm going to use for that is a bit of this cerulean blue, and I'm going to use a really soft version of it because I do not want it to be obvious. I want it to be soft, right? And so here and right at this line here, it just kind of comes here. Now I don't see really a lot of blue in other places, but those two places. And so I want to bring those in. And when I'm looking at these reference photos, more than like trying to get an exact shape, I'm really looking at how colors are playing together. And sometimes I'm exaggerating that. Sometimes I want my colors to play together in a stronger way so that when you're looking at that art, you're like, oh, that's what was really interesting about that picture. Okay, so now I'm going to take my darker green and I'm going to build this up slowly. I'd rather go slowly and add more layers than go too much and then not be able to take it back. And so we're going to kind of fill in around those places. I'm not going to touch where that green is, right? And I'm just adding just like ever so slightly darker green than what was down. And we're going to just build this up slowly. And I'm going to bring my color right to where that kind of blue mark is that we made before. And then this is going to come here. And what I'm seeing is that this is a little more yellowy. We've got a lot of sun hitting this, but it's more like the orangey yellow, not the initial lemon yellow. And so I'm going to just mix a bit of that in over by my green puddle so that it still retains some green. And I'm going to just pop up like this because it kind of does. It's kind of like in two spots. So I'm taking my brush and I'm just kind of flicking, and I also notice it's kind of right here too. All right. And it's almost right here. Okay. All right, do you see how we're adding in just those little bits of color? I don't see any other yellow really here. Okay. I think I'm going to take, but I do think I'm going to take that yellow and mix it back into my blue greens, right? And I am going to, I'm going to just dot this right kind of at the edge of where we're making this highlight. And I'm just making just letting the tip of my brush make some marks. And that's adding a little bit of texture because I think I want to do that. I was going to do that at the end, but I think now is good because we've got the soft color happening that we want to make that texture in anyway. And then the same is true here. I'm just kind of barely touching, right? And if you get a little dark, if you're like, ooh, that's more than I wanted, all you have to do is go back in with your paper towel and pull it up, right? Okay. Now, I'm also noticing that right here is a little more yellowy, so I'm going to let's grab at this. That's a little too much. Let's grab a little green, and I'm going to just like right along this side has a lot of yellow to it. All right, now we're going to pull in our sap green. See, this is where I just kind of balance everything out. That's why I like to start with sap green. All right, now I'm going to just pop a big pile of that in here, and we're just going to kind of fill in. I'm going to kind of darken stuff up, right? And this like last bit of yellow is still wet, which is great. So there'll be a little bit of flow in there. And now we're going to come around, and this kind of comes up like this and like this. And it's okay if we're not making perfectly smooth. See how I'm kind of dancing my brush a little, and that's so that I can, oh, you know what I did is I covered up that blue highlight. That's not what I wanted to do. So I'm just going to come in with my paper towel, a little bit of water, a little bit of paper towel, and I'm just going to pull that up. Yeah, that was not my plan. That happens. Sometimes I get lost in what I'm doing. Okay, but my blue is back. All right, and now let's pop around here from the top, and we're just going to add our green here, and I'm gonna see how I'm kind of dancing around as we get to the center. Like I said, we're not going to worry about texture in the whole thing, but we are going to just make sure that it's textured in a few spots, because then your eye will just assume that the rest of it is textured. So I'm just kind of leaving some, some kind of blank spots. There we go. Okay. Do you see how we're starting to develop some really interesting shapes? And I really like what we've got going on here. This is looking good. Okay. So now this yellowy part has gotten it's a little too yellowy. We're just going to kind of come in here and dot some paint in here to soften that up. Okay. Let's let this dry. And then we're going to add our next layer. If I keep going in while it's wet, we have the potential for disrupting what we have. And if we really like what we've got going on, then we don't want to do that. I am going to, this got a little darker than I wanted, so I'm just going to kind of blot down here to bring some of those highlights back. Don't be afraid to use your paper towel to pull some paint back out again. All right, we're going to go ahead and let this dry. So give it like 15 minutes, and then we'll come back and add some more paint. Okay, our avocado is dry to the touch, and so we're ready to go in and let's add some of those deeper tones. I'm going to just get some more of my sap green. I'm going to mix in some of that blue. But what's happening is when I'm mixing in that blue, like it's a darker green, but it's a little bit too pure. And I'm looking at the picture, and the picture is a little more like, I don't want to say grayed out, but a little muted. And so what we're going to do is take a touch of orange, tiny amount, and add it. And you see how that really changes the color? Here, let me get a little, I need a darker. We're going to go a little darker. All right. So add that little bit of orange, add in some of this. We're just kind of, I think I need to refill that. I also have a lot of water on here. Okay, there we go. And a touch of orange. Okay, there. That's nice. Oh, that's really nice. Okay, so this is what we're going to use to develop those darker tones, which is right here. And we're going to kind of come around where that blue spot was. And then it's really dark in here. You see how my edges are smooth around the shape of the avocado, but I'm just leaving some spaces here and there to give it that idea of texture, right? And I'm doing that by, I'm holding my brush and pulling it down where I would pull it down, but I'm just kind of like lifting it up, pushing it in, lifting it up, pushing it in, kind of a movement. Okay, now I don't want, let's see, I want it to be just dark right here too, just as dark. And it has kind of like kind of comes up like this. We want to accentuate that, and then it kind of comes up like that. And around a little bit like this. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is add my sap green back in with my yellow. I'm going to just kind of come into here a little higher, and I'm just kind of dancing around, right? And I'm just bringing that color in. By doing it this way, we're kind of lightening it up. I'm going to add a little yellow here, or maybe here, here. Okay, that's what we want. We want like a yellowy green color. And I just keep looking at my reference photo, and we're going to kind of come up in here. And we're just kind of dancing, right? And that gives us this really great texture. this is kind of a true green right here. Right here, and so we're just gonna kind of, it's got like a little bit of yellow background, it's a little light, we're gonna go like that. Okay, so now we're gonna come up here, same thing. This is a little darker here. We've got this little highlight, but that highlight of that blue, it's like it's very subtle. So I don't want that to be a big thing. And then we've got like this interesting, kind of comes down and is a little darker right here. So we're pulling into that darker paint here that we mixed up earlier. Now it's not as dark as the original, but it is a little darker. And so do you see how we're adding that kind of contrast and interest here? And if you'll notice, some of that texture sort of slides over into this highlighted space. So I'm just kind of dancing the very tip of my brush, like I'm just wiggling and dancing as I'm painting. And I'm gonna kind of bring this down here, like this, just a little. Okay, and now, and this is a little darker right here. It's got some really interesting highlights. And probably part of that is you've got your sun coming in this way, but this is on a tree, so there are gonna be some other leaves that are casting shade that maybe we don't even see from the perspective that we're looking at. Okay, so now, in order to blend out what we did that was really dark, I'm using this kind of, it's not quite as dark anymore, color to come in, and I'm just dancing, dancing, dancing around. Give it that nice texture. And it kind of comes in like this, right? And almost there's like a darkness, it almost curves back this way. So we're gonna do that, and we're just gonna dance in a little texture there. Oh, it's looking so good. Okay, so I'm really happy with what we've got going on so far. I'm just kind of going in and filling out, like there's a little bit of shadowing here. Now this is really light in the picture, but our background is not as dark, and I don't want to make our background as dark. So in order to make this, in order to give this definition to this side without losing it to the background, we're going to add just the softest bit of green, and we're going to kind of fill it in on our own so that it still has the shape of the avocado, right? And we're going to add a little bit of texture. Okay, and I'm going to pull that up a little. There. Okay, so we still have a lovely highlight. Now what's happening is my dark paint, I'm going to add a little more of this blue in here. It's kind of like, it doesn't have, like there's a stronger linear kind of line, and mine doesn't have that. So I'm adding a little bit of just blue in. I love blue for highlight. Maybe a little sap green, but blue. I think blue makes things look cool and in the shade, right? And so I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to add a little bit of blue in here like this, just to give it a bit more like, hey, there's this definite highlight that comes here. Or I'm sorry, shadow. Using the wrong words. All right, and then I'm going to just paper towel that out a little. There. Okay, I'm going to step back, take a look at what's missing. I think I'm going to add a little bit of this blue in here as well. So I'm just adjusting the color. This is more blue for sure than it is in the actual picture, but I like it. So sometimes we do that. Okay, we're going to go like this. I'm just going to kind of bring this along here. I'm just playing now. If you want to be done, you can be done. If you're worried about playing and wrecking it, that's probably a fair worry, because sometimes this is where it goes south. But I'm thinking of this as these prompts as great practice for developing some new skills. Okay, if it gets a little dark, just go ahead and pull things up a bit with your paper towel. Okay, I think I'm going to leave the avocado alone. And let's, there's kind of a golden, I don't think I am yet. Okay, there's kind of a goldeny color that comes off the base here. So I'm going to throw in some kind of strong yellowy, like right here. Okay, I like that. Maybe not there. Okay. And I feel like my texture has gotten a little too wild, even though there's a lot of texture in the actual avocado. I feel like mine's a little too strong and I'm losing sight of things. So I'm going to go through and just smooth a little bit of this out. Oh, that's much better. Sometimes we can get carried away with the details, and that's what I was feeling like is happening. So we're just going to smooth some of this out. There. Okay. And let's smooth some of this out. All right. Ooh, I'm happy with that. Okay. So now let's just bring this down a little bit here. Okay. Let's work on this stem. The stem is very yellow, so I'm going to take this Azo Yellow Medium and I'm going to paint up the stem. And while it's wet, it's got some really cool kind of pinkish color. I'm going to add a bit of that quinacridone rose right up in here and right down in here. I'm going to add that to here as well. Just going to charge it in. Now this is kind of wet, so we're just going to charge it in. I'm going to add more of it here than we actually have, but I think that there's quite a bit actually. There's quite a bit. Okay, and then you're right here. That's like showing that the avocado is starting to ripen. Got like a weird dark spot right there, but that's okay. All right, so I think what we're gonna do, I think this just needs to be a little bit more yellowed. Maybe a bit of green just dabbing in it. Maybe up here too. Okay, I think I've got like too much contrast maybe. I don't know if there's such a thing. Okay, so just play with your avocado until you have it just how you want it. I'm pretty happy with this. Yeah, pretty happy. I still feel like I need to smooth this out a bit. And I think it's because, and this is where like you can get overly detailed. I think I got overly detailed in that texture. And so I think that takes away from it a little bit. And so I'm just going to kind of go back in and fix that a bit. All right. There. I'm not touching it. All right. I'm going to make this splashy because that's fun. So we're going to just add a bunch of water to that green paint. And I'm just going to boom, boom, boom. And I'm going to add a bunch of water to that yellow paint. And I'm going to add some of that. And I'm going to use a little bit of this. I'm going to take this pink and I'm going to pop that into that yellow to give it that warmer tone. And I'm going to use a little bit of that down in here. And it got a little crazy, so I'm just going to add a little water. If it's feeling too splattery, you can pop up with your paper towel, but you can also go in with a little water to smooth it all out too. And if you've got spots on like the leaves or something that you're not loving it, you just kind of just play with it. I've said that a lot on this one. Okay. Let's let this dry. We're going to let this dry and then we're going to come back and see if we need to do anything else. Okay, so what I do sometimes after painting dries is I like to take it and set it against something across the room and take a look and figure out what I like, what I don't like, what is working, what isn't working. And so my avocado has ended up pretty dark. It is pretty dark, but I think the difference is that in the reference photo, the background is really dark. And so there's contrast, but maybe not so much contrast. This avocado feels too dark. And maybe I have too much paint here. So I'm gonna kind of do that at risk. I'm gonna pull some up just by painting in. I lost that little blue highlight, which I think is really pretty, so I'm going to add that back in. Okay, and then the other thing I'm going to do is, and like this got a little dark, so I'm just going to kind of pull some of that up. You have to be careful with this because sometimes you start doing this and you wreck your painting. So proceed with caution. So I'm going to take a little bit of contrast out of the avocado. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little contrast to the leaves, because I think the avocado is standing out in such a strong way that the leaves need a bit something more. So all I'm going to do is go back in with my sap green. I'm not going to mix anything highs or lows. I'm just going to go back in with my sap green, and I'm going to add like right up in here. This leaf can be a little darker. And then I'm going to go up in this leaf, and I'm going to add a bit of my blue into my green. And I might add a touch of that quinacridone pink, the quinacridone rose, or orange. You could use either. Let's try the orange, because there we go. So this is a color that's similar that was in the avocado, and I'm going to use that in this leaf. This leaf is going to be much darker. Okay, and then I'm going to just smooth out the edge here. All right, and I'm going to add a little bit of darkness. The stems are very light, but I'm going to add a little bit more darkness to the base of this leaf. And a little more kind of yellowy green, but a darker yellowy green goes right here. I might draw that out a little. There we go. All right, so I think that helps. I might even go a little darker right here in this underneath part. I think that the picture, you know, that avocado is standing out in such a dark way. There we go. I'm just playing with the blue and orange until I get a color that I like. And so I'm just going to kind of come up here and just tip this in. That's going to be nice and dark. And this is going to get a little darker. There. Not too much. There we go. There. Okay. I'm just like I said, just adding a little bit of contrast to. I'm going to put in a little bit of darkness back in here. And I'm adding a bit of pink. I'm just kind of playing around. Oop, that was too much pink. That's okay. We'll pull some up. There we go. I'm just kind of popping down and blotting up, popping down and blotting up. And then I think the other thing is that this highlight is here, but what I think is we've got this highlight here. You just don't see any texture. So I'm going to take my brush. I'm going to make it fairly dry and then pick up a little bit of this paint, and I'm just going to kind of dab it. Here. Maybe a little more paint. And I'm just going to kind of dab it here so that I'm dry brushing across. There. Oh, that's good. And here too. Okay, I think I'm going to call this one done. It's really hard to know when to stop sometimes, and I think I probably need to stop now. But sometimes it's those little extras that just make it really nice too. Sometimes I saw it was another YouTuber, I can't remember her name because she just popped up on my stuff. And she was talking about you need to think about every painting as being practice, not thinking about making finished pieces. And if you go with that mindset, like, hey, I'm going to spend the next 20 years practicing that art, then you can feel a little more free to say, I'm going to try this out. It's going to work or it's not going to work, but I'm going to give it a try. And so I think it's a healthy mindset to have, instead of trying to like make every painting be perfect. And then, oops, if it goes south, we can say, well, that was a good practice piece. There. Okay. Avocado. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. This one was a little less organized, I think partly because I'm really tired. I've had kind of it's been a really rough week. I don't know about you guys, but this has been a tough week for me. So thank you for watching. Hopefully the next video is not this disorganized. So, I'm gonna stop. I need to stop. Let's do a little more splash. Sometimes that just fixes everything. Just gonna roll my brush into that a little. There. Okay. Lots of expression, right? I will see you again tomorrow for July 25th. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we are almost done with the month. If you've been sticking with me this whole time, thank you so much. If you're just jumping in, welcome. If this is the first time you're watching one of my tutorials, please watch another one because this is probably not the most, like I said, most organized. So I apologize for that, but it is what it is. Thanks so much and have a great night.